Hey, everybody, and welcome into a Tuesday edition of KC Sports Tonight. Thanks for joining us here on July the 8th as we set the table for the night ahead here in KC Sports. We have three big topics to talk about today, but I think the biggest, we got to start with maybe the one that's bringing the most joy to fans in Kansas City right now. Yesterday, the Royals, can you believe it? They hit 4 home runs at Kauffman Stadium. That was the same amount of home runs they hit at the K for the entire month of June. They did that last night at the K. It was their first multi-home run game at Kauffman Stadium in their last 56 games. I think, Gabe, that went back to August of last year. So it's kind of crazy to think about. If you went to the K and you saw one Royals homer, it had been a very long time since you'd seen two. For you, Gabe, how cool was it to see the boys kind of break out and hit 4 dingers yesterday?
I mean, you and I were talking about this last night. It just felt like several different stats you'd read and you'd be like, is that really true? And one of them was not only had they matched the home runs for the month of June, the multi-home run games for the first time since August, and first time in the history of the Royals that Vinny, Bobby, and Salvi all homered in the exact same game. So kind of like a shooting star of a Royals game last night, if we're being honest.
No, it absolutely was. Yesterday I was out there at the ballpark, and I know a lot of Royals fans have really kind of been talking about how this team looks down. This team looks slow. This team looks like it's pressing, like they're trying to force the issue instead of letting the game come to them. Before the game in the clubhouse yesterday, I saw a group that was very relaxed, that was jovial, like we were getting ready to interview Bobby Witt Jr., and from across the clubhouse, Vinny Pasquantino was like, "Yo, Bob, they're going to ask you about being an all-star," and like the whole room erupts in laughter. So it was good to see them back enjoying playing baseball, and right now they really seem to be playing some of the best baseball they've played all season long, having a winning road trip, and then here coming back home to Kauffman Stadium, a place that they had not been playing well, and then yesterday beating the Pirates 9-3. Good news for them, obviously, avoiding Paul Skeens, but the 4 homers yesterday, as you said, with 3 of them being hit by Bobby, Salvi, and Vinny, I feel like a lot of the conversation about this team, like so many fans have just kind of been waiting for the Royals to turn it on, to go on a run, and to become to fulfill their potential, because I think it's safe to say right now the Royals have not done that. Seeing those 3 guys hit the homers, seeing the way that Bobby has looked since June, the way that Vinny has looked since the start of May. Gabe, I guess what I'm asking, I think the Royals might be about to go on a run. Do you think with these 3 potentially being hot at the same time, could that add up to a recipe where this team goes maybe on a 6-7 game win streak?
I think that the most positive indicator of that is probably the play of Bobby Witt Jr., specifically his play on the road trip. He was batting over 400 for the road trip. He comes home. He has 2 hits, a home run, an opposite field home run, and it was, as I told you today, we were looking at the data, and it was the softest hit ball that he had all night last night, with a line out to left field that easily required a really tough play from Tommy Pham to stop it from either being another single or a ball that gets to the wall, and who knows, maybe Bobby's threatening for a double or a triple. I think that is a really encouraging sign, and then as well as the fact that Vinny's power numbers have kind of reemerged, and 2 home runs on the 4th of July, a home run last night against a lefty in Heaney, and it just felt like the plate appearances are better from the entire offense, up and down the order. I'm very intrigued to see. I know he's not in the lineup tonight. Mark Canha went on the IL, and Cam Devaney gets the call up, and he'll get his MLB debut. That's another guy who, if you're talking about power, his barrel percentage and how hard he hits the ball, at least in AAA, is really encouraging. Now, we've seen several guys on this team have a lot of success in AAA and it not necessarily translate. So who knows what level of success he'll have when he gets to Kansas City. But that's another thing to look at over these next 5 games before the All-Star break. And you're getting it at a good time. The Pirates are not playing well. They're not playing good baseball. The Mets are not playing good baseball. So you've got a chance to kind of build into the All-Star break and then come out of the All-Star break and play a Marlins team that's not playing great either. So I know you're really in on this being a good stretch of baseball for the Royals. I think it could be as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, just as we were kind of talking about when I came into work today, I was like, I don't want to be drinking too much of the Royals Kool-Aid because I was out there at the ballpark yesterday. We were talking with the guys. We could see the confidence. But I really feel like this team, it's crazy to say because they're 44 and 48, but they really might be able to go on a run right here. And it really helps that they're taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are just one of the worst teams in all of baseball. I think for the entire July 4th weekend, the Pittsburgh Pirates did not score one time. Friday, 0. Saturday, 0. Sunday, 0. And on Sunday, they had Paul Skeens starting, and he was electric. The Pittsburgh Pirates, it was good to see the Royals get the win yesterday, but I think they're a major league team, but we have to temper expectations because the Pittsburgh Pirates really aren't that good. But bringing the conversation back to some of those Royal stars that hit homers yesterday, Vinny Pasquantino, I think we need to maybe start talking about this guy as one of the most underrated players in baseball. I think last year before he went out, it was almost 20 homers, almost 100 RBI before he lost. I think the last month and a half of the season this year didn't get the start to the season that he wanted. But boy, since May 1st, I think his numbers are phenomenal. He's batting over 300, and the power seems to have come back. And it's just like in a Royals offense that's really been struggling to produce. There's really not a lot of batters that pitchers have to pitch to. And Vinny's been producing. So Gabe, what do you think about that? Is Vinny Pasquantino, is he underrated across baseball? Because he really didn't catch a whiff of the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think he's underrated in this sense that he's probably not somebody who's given a lot of thought. He's not somebody who, even when people nationally think about the Royals, they're mostly just thinking about Bobby Witt Jr. or they're thinking about tried and true Salvador Perez and what he's done for the Royals for the last decade plus. But with that being said, yeah, I mean, to your point, the numbers that Vinny put up last season and the numbers that he's put up since, I think the May cutoff that you point out is a good one because he was battling that hamstring issue from the end of spring training throughout April.
Great point.
And ever since May, I mean, who knows what the true point of, and only Vinny would be able to tell you if he was willing to, when he actually started to feel great again. But since May, he's been hitting at a much higher level, and that is, you couple that with the reemergence of Bobby Witt Jr. and specifically the reemergence in terms of power numbers, because he homered on Sunday, he homered last night, and he homered against the Dodgers a couple weekends ago. That gives you a chance where that has to be the thing that turns around for this team to change things. We've talked enough about how this team doesn't really strike out a lot. This team puts the ball in play a ton. They've actually gotten plenty of singles. It's just a matter of guys hitting doubles, triples, and home runs. Over the road trip, Vinny started doing that. Bobby started doing that. If they're able to do that at home, that puts you in a spot where they're more of the team that they were last season, which was a playoff team, than the team that they had been really concerningly throughout the entirety of June.
Yeah, so all these guys that we've been talking about that have been contributing to the Royals, they all play in one part of the field, the infield. We know the infield for the Royals is good, and yesterday when we got to speak with Royals GM J.J. Piccolo, he made it very clear that the Royals know that they need an outfielder that can hit, because the Royals outfield has just been it has not been good this year. Offensively, I think you can make some arguments that maybe defensively it hasn't lived up to what people thought it would be, although I think Kyle Isbell and Jack Caglione has actually acquitted himself very well out there in the outfield. But with Jack Caglione, I really hope that these last two games maybe here against the Pirates are an opportunity for him to break out, because I think in his first 30 big league games he's batting below 150. He has only those two homers that he hit in one game against the Texas Rangers, and yesterday before the game we saw him doing some pregame work with hitting coach Alex Zumwalt, trying to hit some sliders, work on that. Cags not really having the start to his career that we had envisioned. They always say the biggest jump in sports of any sport, football, basketball, baseball, the biggest jump for any athlete to make could be AAA to the big leagues. So Gabe, what do you maybe think of the first 30 games that we've seen out of Jack Caglione? Because we saw early on he was really hitting the ball really hard. He was squaring it up, just getting unlucky. But recently I feel like it's looked a little different.
Yeah, if anything, the fact that he was hitting the ball really hard, I think that early on the process was pretty good and he was getting unlucky. Now I think that teams have gotten a little bit of a book on him on where he can be exposed, and they are relentlessly attacking him at that. And now the results have not been as good. The positive, I guess you could take, is that he is seeing more pitches per at bat. I don't feel like he's getting himself out on the first pitch of the at-bat as often as he was early on. The negative, of course, is that he's not hitting the ball nearly as hard as often. But I would just hope that the weight or the emotional toll of making all of these outs is not getting to him. I think that for as poorly as the hitting results have gone, he really, as you just mentioned, has gotten significantly better defensively, and there's really I can only think of one play in which he didn't make that he should have, and there's been several others where, yeah, his range might be a little limited because of his size, but he's making the plays he should. There's a couple balls last night that were hit at him that, given the wind and he was moving around and he was still making catches, I think that defensively he's shown himself to be pretty solid. When he's gotten chances at first base, he's made plays as well. So that's a positive. But keeping his spirits high and maybe a little bit of the alleviation of responsibility for him would be nice if others get going. And as we just mentioned, Bobby, Vinny, Michael, Salvi, if they're hitting the ball hard and if they're creating some traffic for him, like even last night, he comes up in a spot second and third, was probably going to get something pretty good to hit, and the first pitch hits him. And you could see his frustration. I think that was a little bit of like oh man, I really knew I was going to get a chance to turn on something there. And of course, he gets hit by a pitch, and it feels like that's been kind of his way on base recently. He's gotten hit a couple times in the last week and a half. So hopefully it turns at some point. But I mean, we've seen this with a guy who is in his draft class with the Athletics, Nick Kurtz, who was picked 4th overall, 2 spots ahead of Jack, struggled a lot his first month, and then started to really turn things on in his second month in the bigs. So now that you're at like the 28, 29 game mark for Jack, hopefully it turns around and he gets going, maybe post All-Star break.
Yeah, I know certainly a lot of the guys want him to get going. I hope everyone in the fan base does not. I mean, keep supporting this guy. He's 22 years old. He was drafted literally 1 year ago. And I have to say, the one thing that has really stood out, and we've touched on a little bit, has been his outfield defense. Because I remember when he was called up really not that long ago, people were asking him, and he was like, I'm learning how to catch fly balls at the major league level. He's like, I learned a little bit in Double-A and Triple-A, but he's like, now I'm playing in ballparks that have 3 decks. Like, I'm having to pick it off of fans instead of a bright blue sky. Like, this was a guy that was literally learning how to play outfield at the major league level. And the major league field, you cannot hide. There is no hiding of anybody. I don't care what anyone says. He has robbed the home run. He has made diving catches. And then just early on, when he was hitting the ball so hard, just so unlucky. So Cags, hopefully we'll see him turn it around here coming up. I know he's been doing the work. He's really, really trying to kind of bust out of this, and let's see kind of what happens. But moving on here, we have 2. I know it's July the 8th, but we actually have 2 football topics today and only 1 on baseball. The first one was the K-State Wildcats. The Big 12 conference had their annual media days. It started today down in Frisco, Texas. K-State talked today. KU will talk tomorrow. But head coach Chris Kleiman, he was peppered with a lot of questions about kind of expectations for K-State this year. They've won at least 9 games in the last 3 seasons. I believe it was 2022 that they were the Big 12 champions. Kleiman's built up a good program out there, but he was kind of asked, people were asking, what's the key here for the Wildcats? Maybe where are we going to see a leap with this team, and specifically with Avery Johnson? I was maybe surprised to hear Kleiman say that Johnson has put on 17 pounds of muscle, because that's, I mean, in college football programs, we know like height, weight, they're very in tune with how their athletes are. 17 pounds of muscle for Avery is a bunch. I mean, he was a dual threat quarterback, one of the best top recruits in the nation when he was a high school senior. And he's very, very fast, one of the fastest players on the team. So, Gabe, when you hear Avery Johnson has put on 17 pounds of muscle, what does that mean for K-State? What are the possibilities? Because I think a lot of fans are going to start to dream.
Well, I think that maybe he's going to get used a little bit more in red zone running the ball, trying to score some more touchdowns. I think that was one of the things that was confusing about last season, was there was such an apparent issue in the receiving room of just who did they trust to throw the ball to, and how much of the offense was reliant upon either Avery creating with his legs, and they didn't seem to love to rely upon that. They didn't want to put him in harm's way, or DJ Giddens. Now they don't have DJ Giddens anymore. They've got Dylan Edwards, who was really, really good in their bowl game back in December. And so Dylan Edwards with Avery Johnson, that's probably the number one thing to look at this year. I'm extremely intrigued to see, because I think that if you're going to unlock the total package of this offense, you probably have to let Avery Johnson run the ball more than he did last season. And at times that seemed to be, if anything, it's like the restrictor on the golf cart, like holding the cart back from going as fast as it possibly can, where maybe it's a little safer, but you lower the ceiling of the offense, and it almost feels a little bit to parallel a guy who recently won the Heisman, where you kind of saw early on in his career less turnovers, less running the ball, keeping him safe, a little more frail body, Jaden Daniels. And then later in his career when he got to LSU and he gained some weight, and even then he wasn't a huge guy, and Avery has him beat in terms of physical stature entering college football and being in his junior season. He's a bigger guy than Jaden Daniels was from a width perspective, I guess. Yeah. But if that is something where he wasn't really truly unlocked until he started to run the ball and take complete advantage of his legs at LSU, and that's kind of how he turned into a Heisman contender. I think everybody at K-State truly believes that, yeah, that's the ceiling for Avery Johnson, is like he can be in that Heisman conversation. He's that talented. He's probably as physically talented as any quarterback in the Big 12 is. The true question to me is how much do they let him run, and do they have enough of a passing game, enough receivers who they trust to hit their ceiling? And I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I love that we're going to get to figure that out early in the season, because they play a great test, Iowa State, week 1.
Yeah, that game.
Or week 0.
A week 0 game
Yeah.
in Ireland. Chris Kleiman, actually, they asked him about that game, because K-State gave up a home game to play in that game, which had a huge impact on the Manhattan community, not only just culturally, community-wise, but economically. When there's a game in Manhattan, that puts a lot of money in a lot of people's pockets there in that town. And he said that was a hard decision for the university to decide to give up that home game. But I've been doing this for a little bit more than a decade now, seen my own, my fair share of media days when, you'll see coaches go up there and kind of bluster, and they'll give you their sales pitch about why they think they're going to be good. For me, watching Chris Kleiman speak today, I think he knows that he has a real one in Avery Johnson. And this is the guy, he's like, all right, I'm going to go into this season with probably one of the best. I think we can say this. I think Avery Johnson has potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football this season. And when you hear that he's put on 17 pounds of muscle, and then also Chris Kleiman was saying that Avery has gotten faster. So it seems like this guy just continues to develop and develop and develop. And one thing that also stands out to me, because Gabe, you were talking about the passing attack last year at K-State. That definitely was not what they would want. Mm-hmm. Chris talked today. He's like, a lot of people don't know how good of a passer Avery is. So to hear him talk about that, Gabe, where does that take you? Do you believe him? Do you believe him?
I don't know.
Everyone sees the legs. Everyone sees how he is in space. Everyone knows his insane athletic ability. But when the head coach says he's a good passer, do you believe him now in July?
I don't know if they're going to – I guess I'm just hesitant to – I'm going to have to see it. There was simply too many times last season in which I think that you can point to specifically the passing game being less than below par, and as a result, and I can think of specifically a game that I attended, the ASU K-State game. I was in Manhattan for that, and it was very apparent that ASU was selling out to stop the run, and they just simply did not believe, despite the fact that the defensive backs and the cornerbacks for ASU weren't special. It wasn't the best part of the ASU defense. They were going to put their corners on an island and say, okay, go beat us. And given K-State's receiving room last year, that was not something that they were able to accomplish. And there were a lot of boos that night from the K-State fan base, whether it was play calling, whether it was execution, whether it was whatever. That was the matter of fact. And so I'm in wait and see mode for that. But I do think that if you unlock Avery Johnson as a runner and you utilize him as an advantage in terms of another guy that people have to account for, then yeah, the offense is way more threatening. So I think that in general, my new Big 12 16-team league take is going to be that when a team is not picked to finish first or second, and I guess there's no longer a media poll or there's no longer a preseason poll, so we don't know what to base it off of. But I think that the expectation is if a team is picked to finish 1 or 2, it's probably a decent chance to fade them. And if they're 3 or 4 or 5, those are the teams to bet on. And I think K-State, if anything, maybe a little lesser expectations. Maybe they fly under the radar this year and they are back in Arlington in this December. It wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, no, the Big 12 certainly is always crazy. And speaking of the playoff, Chris Kleiman today was kind of asked about the college football playoff, and he thinks that they need to expand it to 16 teams to eliminate the byes. He wants everyone playing the same amount of games, and I actually think that's a tremendous, tremendous point. But I guess the counterpoint to that is that, like, if you win your conference, you're one of the best teams in America, you earn the bye. Gabe, what do you think about the 16-team playoff comments by Chris Kleiman? I guess now I'm thinking about it and saying it out loud. I think that, if you won one of the Power 4 conference or you earned a top 4 seed, I should say, I think you actually earned a bye. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the 16, it's going to go to 16 because that's what's going to make them more money, and that's what the people in suits care about that run college sports, despite, I think, a lot of evidence that certain things that are better for the sport are not being followed or not things that they're pursuing. The greater good of the sport is talked about, and Brett Yormark talked about that today, of wanting the 5 auto bids and the 11 at-large bids to be the system, not the 4-4, 2-2, whatever bids being tossed around between the SEC, Big 10, ACC, and Big 12. But I don't know if it makes sense. All I know is that college football is straying further and further from the things that make it something that people love. And if we're going to get rid of conference championship games, if we're going to get rid of that special first weekend in December where winning, for a lot of schools, winning your conference championship is it's the equivalent of winning a Super Bowl, because realistically you're probably just not contending for a national championship more often than not. And I think a lot of years that's probably the situation that Big 12 schools are going to be in. So if we get to a point where the SEC and the Big 10 decide, okay, we're not going to do conference championships, we're so much better than everybody else, we're going to put whatever we want into the playoff, then I would hope that the Big 12 continues to have a championship game, because I think that that's special, and I think that crowning a real champion is important. But we're also at the point where the leagues are so big, you don't even get to play nearly half the teams. So tiebreakers every year are going to come into form of determining who gets to go to the conference championship game. So it's all a mess. And I don't know. It's
all a mess.
It's all a mess.
But
that's where I'm going to go.
In college sports, cash is king. He who
exactly,
has the gold
yeah.
makes the rules. I know they try to say there's all these things about traditions and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, USC is in the Big Ten. They have to travel from L.A. to Rutgers all the way in New Jersey. Literally none of this makes sense, but it's all about dollars for football. People wanted money to infiltrate college sports, and I understand that. There have been a lot of positives to that, but there also have been a lot of negatives, and and this is kind of some of it. But hey, this is what comes with it. This is the world that we live in. This is the world everyone that living has created. So that's what's going on. All right, Trey Smith, he's got a little bit of a deadline coming up. The Chiefs have training camp coming up in 2 weeks. But Gabe, you and I were talking about this. Can you kind of, for maybe someone at home that doesn't quite know the deadline situation here with Trey Smith, can you explain what's happening?
So the deadline to sign an extension for someone who is on a franchise tag is July 15th. If he is not extended by July 15th, he is locked into being on the franchise tag for this season. That number, I don't know the exact number, but it would be locked in, and then you would have
a little more. It's $23.4 million.
There you go,
yep.
$23.4 million. That number becomes a new negotiation at the end of next season, where you could either franchise tag him again or extend him then. But of course, if if you don't franchise tag him or if you have to franchise tag him next season, or if you have to negotiate an extension next offseason, which you would presume that they're going to do, given that they made their choice of Trey Smith over Joe Thuney. They made their choice of Trey Smith probably over Jawan Taylor. And it is the only thing that's set in stone for the rest of the decade, I guess, for the Chiefs on the offensive line is that Creed Humphrey will be playing center. Everything else is up for debate until they lock in Trey Smith, and that's presumably the next move. And you would hope to get it done before next Tuesday, because next offseason you're probably on the line trying to set up something with Trent McDuffie. You're probably on the line trying to set up something with George Karlaftis. And you're possibly in the conversation of doing an early extension with someone like a Rashee Rice. We know that wide receivers are always up for wanting to rework their deals before those expire. So I think that pushing it down the line, you're just creating a future you problems if they don't get this done before next Tuesday.
Yeah, this is a situation that I don't think the Chiefs want to let fester, because we know as soon as right after the draft, Brett Veach was like talking about, we want to get the deal done with Trey Smith. Like that's one of our top priorities, and here we are a week away from the deadline, and they don't have a deal. And I know a lot of players just in the NFL, they don't like to play under the franchise tag. It kind of creates a little bit of a situation. I'm not saying that would happen here with Trey Smith, but we have seen that happen where players playing under the franchise tag, it makes them a little unhappy, and then that can kind of create a dynamic in the locker room that doesn't necessarily have to be there if the two sides can agree to a deal. But one thing that we're going to see, though, is I think is really unlikely. Well, we're going to learn a lot here about what's going to happen, because Trey Smith, he's due $23.4 million. I was looking this up before the show. I think the highest paid guard outside of that franchise tag is $21 million. Is Trey Smith worth that much more? I'm not sure. He is one of the best guards in football, but it's just at a certain point you have to look at where the Chiefs are allocating their salary cap, and I think they already spend more than anybody else in the entire league on their offense. And there are a lot of factors at play in that, but at a certain point, you can't spend all your money on one side of the football. There has got to be some well, the Chiefs clearly know what they're doing, but it's just like, it's a tough situation that I don't think they want to let fester, and this is something that they certainly have wanted to get done. So it's a big storyline going into training camp. What is going to happen with Trey Smith? But we do know he showed up to OTAs or mini camp. Like he's doing the part. He wants to be part of the team. It looks like they just need to get some stuff kind of hashed out there. Gabe, anything else on this point?
He's the only player in the NFL on the franchise tag at the moment. So if he gets a deal, then no one will be playing on the franchise tag in 2025 throughout the entire league.
And that tells you just how much teams and players don't want to operate under this situation. And so as Gabe tells us, it's a one-of-one situation in the NFL this offseason. And we know the most important thing for the Chiefs is keeping Patrick Mahomes upright, because he is the most important player in Kansas City sports. Patrick Mahomes right there under center for the Chiefs. So always something to talk about. It's July the 8th, but two good football topics today. So that's all we have here on KC Sports Tonight on this Tuesday. But we'll hope you see our team here tomorrow at 5:30. Take care, guys.